Breaking news into CBS Sports HQ, Mike Krzyzewski will call it quits after next season, leaving open the question of who will replace Coach K at Duke. Well, the answer is John Shire, who's been on the Duke staff for 8 seasons and long believed to be the heir apparent in Durham. Krzyzewski will coach next season and step down, making way for Shire. So we take a look at Shire's time as a Duke assistant coach since 2014. He was a 2015 national champion as an assistant coach, won the 2010 national title with Duke as a player, and obviously played for the Duke Blue Devils, played 144 games for Duke from 2006 to 2010. Let's welcome in our Matt Norlander now to break down everything going on in Durham right now. So, Matt, you just confirmed it. Do you believe that John Shire is the right call to take over next season?
Yeah, I think he is a natural call. I actually think Tommy Amaker at Harvard would have probably been, honestly, I probably think he would have been the best call given his experience, ties to Duke. I think that would have been an ideal choice there, but Shire would be my 1B to Amaker 1A. You go with Shire because he's been on staff. He's the associate head coach. He's played an instrumental role in some significant recruitments, 2 of the biggest being Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, and because of that, you want to be able to keep this going. You want to be able to continue as best you can to be an elite recruiting power. So with all that in mind, and to get a year of transition, and another point that I want to reemphasize here, and I also mentioned this on our emergency edition of the Eye on College Basketball podcast, Mike Krzyzewski isn't just going to step away and disappear forever. He is going to have a presence around that program, literally on that campus, and he will physically be around the program even after he retires. And since Shire is young, he's going to be just 1 year older when he inherits the job than Krzyzewski was when he got the job all the way back in 1980. I actually think that this could be an ideal transition process, not just next season, Jenny, but year 1, year 2 for Shire as he gets even more footing. Because the one thing that is true, no matter how much they try and prepare him for getting the job, it will be different the final day that he is the associate head coach and the first day he is the actual head coach, let alone once you start coaching games as head coach of the Duke Blue Devils as John Shire. So I think he is a good fit and certainly makes sense. It was obviously going to be him. If it wasn't an Amaker or Johnny Dawkins, it was going to be John Shire.
Obviously, Coach K, as you mentioned, isn't going anywhere quite yet, and we do have this full season ahead of us to help with that transition. But what do you think that season looks like? Do you think we'll see Shire taking more of a leading role next year?
I do think we will see plenty of instances where his presence, his availability from a media perspective, I do think we will see more of that, because why wouldn't you? Not that he's not used to this already. I mean, frankly, it's not as though John Shire has just been operating as an assistant within the confines of the Duke program, and that's really all anyone knows about him. John Shire has really good relationships with plenty of people in the media. He is an up-and-coming, highly thought-of coach. I mean, he was involved potentially to get, say, the DePaul job earlier in this offseason. He is from Chicago. I do think we will see some grooming in this respect where, be it through, on-camera, halftime interviews, that kind of stuff. Krzyzewski famously only does those with CBS for the NCAA tournament. But yeah, to answer your question, Jenny, I do think we will get some of that transition going. You'll have sit-downs with both Kay and Shire, I'm sure, many times this season on camera with the media, with digital media, to kind of ease the transition process once it happens. Because what's undeniable is once the season begins, and we're still so far off, but once we get to it, the Coach K farewell tour, this is inevitable, okay? The Duke Mike Krzyzewski media coverage is going to be as all-encompassing as it's ever been, and perhaps rightfully so, because he's a legend and arguably the greatest coach in the history of men's basketball.
You have to wonder, too, how that is going to affect the team this upcoming year, if it's going to add some pressure to the guys. But something interesting of note, we've seen this happen before, maybe not to Coach K's level, of course, but successful coaches who've left a program and had someone come in and replace them. But those coaches typically don't stick around for very long. So do you think that Shire is the long-term plan here for Duke?
Potentially, if we could just keep it on this graphic for a quick second here. So Bartow, handpicked. Mike Davis was not. Bob Knight was forced out. Kevin Ollie was handpicked by Jim Calhoun. And then Guthridge, of course, was an assistant of 30 years under Dean Smith there. And so can he be a long-term replacement? The evidence suggests that it is very hard to do that, but he's different from all of these other coaches in that not only did he play for the coach that he is replacing, he has not been a sitting assistant for 20 to 25 years. Sometimes there is a thought that if you've been an assistant, and I'm not saying this is the right thought, I'm just saying this has existed, particularly among athletic directors. I would say it's an outdated way of thinking that if you make it to a certain age and you've only been an assistant, then you're just not going to be head coach material at a power conference program. Each situation is different, and I would say that just because Mike Davis, who, by the way, made the national championship game, and Bill Guthridge and Gene Bartow, he's probably the most infamous one, but replacing, that's really the most analogous comparison. I mean, replace Wooden, replace Krzyzewski, they're kind of, very, very, very similar there. But that doesn't mean Shire can't be successful. He's very young, and if anything, I've heard some of this, that this is not enviable at all. It's the Duke job. It is enviable. It doesn't matter who you're replacing. Duke men's basketball is at worst the third best job in college hoops. So if for some reason John Shire winds up failing and is there for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years and doesn't work out, he won't even be 40 years old. He will have a long coaching career ahead of him. And if you're ever going to step into a situation, I mean, why not do it when you're young and you still have plenty to prove?
It's the Duke job. As you mentioned, too, he was a lead recruiter on such stars as Jason Tatum and Zion Williamson. So how does this affect the recruiting game for Duke?
Well, when you don't have Mike Krzyzewski as the head coach of your program anymore, it is undeniably going to impact how you recruit. That's just undeniable. He is the man with the 5 national championships, the 12 Final Four appearances, including a run, by the way, in the 80s and 90s where he went 7 times in 9 seasons. I don't know if we'll ever see that again in men's college basketball. So I do think it will impact Duke. We've actually seen, you see the rankings here right now. Juwan Howard benefiting plenty, getting it done at Michigan. Gonzaga has its greatest class ever. Rick Barnes continues to get it done, and he's even creeping up into the late 60s there. I do think that Duke will remain a national recruiting power. Like, we're not going to look up in 2 years and Duke's going to have the 27th ranked recruiting class. That's just not going to happen. The question becomes, will Duke be able to consistently be in the top 5 the way that for almost a decade it was Duke and Kentucky 1 and 2, one or the other? Calipari and Krzyzewski, they were always the number 1 or number 2 class almost every single season for 10 straight years. With Shire, Duke, Nike behind that program, I think that there's a good chance, but I think it is unavoidable that we are just more likely to see Duke under Shire might have the number 4 class, might have the number 9 class, might have the number 12 class, but it's not going to every single season. I don't believe anyway, without Krzyzewski there, it's not going to be a top 3, top 4 class for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. He's got to prove that on the court before you can lure in those prospects. Because, last thought here, no matter the fact that it's Duke and Shire's had success as an assistant, when you take Krzyzewski away from that, there is a certain amount of uncertainty combined with the lack of experience as a head coach for Shire that will ultimately lead to some 5-star prospects going somewhere else. Whereas if K was there, they might have otherwise played in Durham.
Makes perfect sense there. So first we had Roy Williams, now we have Coach K. It's really for the first time in decades we're seeing a changing of the guards for these schools. All in all, and I know that this is a very loaded question, but how have you seen the game of college basketball change over recent years? I mean, Coach K's started in 1980 at Duke, so it's a completely different game now.
Yeah, I'm actually having a personal crisis with all this. K got to Duke before I was born. I just turned 40. He's about to leave. I'm not okay with any of this, but the game has changed dramatically. And I got to CBS in 2010, and from a recruiting standpoint, and this is, existential stuff with name, image, and likeness, transfer stuff. There are so many facets to college basketball in a good way that has changed that I think might be some of the reason why Krzyzewski is leaving. Let's not forget about the fact that he's going to turn 75 next season. So if anything, I understand why this would be the time that he would think that he would want to step away. I understand all that. But yes, the game has changed dramatically. It doesn't mean that you can't still succeed, can't be a really, really good coach. Rick Pitino came back, is still coaching at Iona. He is a fellow Hall of Fame coach there, but it's not the game that it was in 1998, let alone 1980. And one point I made on the Ion College Basketball Podcast is, Mike Krzyzewski got to Duke in 1980 after having coached at Army. The idea that someone coaching at an Army level school would get a Power 5 job, I'm not even talking the Duke job, because the Duke job then is not what it is now because of, hello, Coach K. I just don't think Mike Krzyzewski's story is repeatable. We're not going to see this again. Forget about like 40 plus years of Hall of Fame level coaching. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being a young coach, late 20s, early 30s, and going from a single bid league to getting a power conference job, having 3 poor years to start, which Mike Krzyzewski did. Tom Butters, the AD at that time, he told me some years back, I was getting asked to fire Mike Krzyzewski, and I would not do it. He stuck with them, and he turned it into an absurd run. Again, arguably the greatest coaching resume in the history of college basketball. Mike Krzyzewski's story is singular. We will not see this again. It's a little bit different from Jim Boeheim, who's always been at Syracuse, but Krzyzewski, for what he's accomplished, it's a special thing. And so just strap in, because the college basketball season is going to have, it's going to be in 2 lanes. One is going to be everything not affiliated with Duke, and the other lane is going to be everything Mike Krzyzewski farewell tour, starting in November.
Consider me strapped in. I'm here for this ride. This is going to be a fun one. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt Norlander, on the latest with everything that's going on in Duke.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.